Hello everyone, welcome to another video where we talk about the books I read, this time in September. And honestly, it was a successful reading month. I read 6 books. And I'm, pretty impressed by that because we're talking about me here. So, 6 whole books, eh? Let's just go in order because I can't think of a better way to do it. And begin with An Immense World by Ed Yong. So this was great. This was an audiobook, and it's a nonfiction. I think it's from last year. And it is about animal senses. So the whole book, every chapter is like a different sense. And sort of the central premise, I guess, is to really talk about like how animals experience the world in ways that overlap with humans, but also in ways that are completely different. And to like think about how, to think about how the way that we sense things, obviously like constrains our perception of reality, I guess. So we are very like aware of, say, things on a visual level. Humans are very visual, unless you're blind. But even blind people pick up to some degree how visual humans are, even just in language. And like, it's hard for us to understand animals that really don't rely on sight for much of anything. Even if those animals can see, but then they just rely on a bunch of other stuff that we don't quite have to the same degree. Anyway, really interesting book. Lots of very interesting facts about animal senses. From sight, hearing, taste, smell, ability to sense, magnetism and electricity, and how animals like dolphins use sonar, and fish and other sea creatures have like this ability to sense like the waves, like the movement of water. Which, I mean, we could do like to a small degree, humans could, just like tactily, but they have like, much, much, much better ability to sense how water has moved, and they, like some can like follow the way that another creature has affected the water, like way after it's gone and stuff, like absolutely wild. Anyway, so super interesting, and I highly recommend it. All right, so the next book, which overlaps because it was a physical book, was The Virgin and the Ice by Ellis Peters. So this is book 6, yes, 6 of the Chronicles of Brother Cadfael mystery series. And it had been like a year since I read one of those, so I was like, I really need to do that again. So I did. And The Virgin and the Ice was fun. It was, I don't think, maybe the strongest of the books that I've read so far in the series, but I generally enjoyed it. Basic premise: the war is heating up again a little bit, the Civil War, and oh boy, I'm gonna screw up the place names. Worcester was attacked, and naturally a whole bunch of people have fled as a result, including these teenage siblings who are nobles but have been raised by the oh god, I'm so bad at things. Nuns, I guess. Anyway, they've been raised by the church. At least that's where they're staying right now. But they're waiting for their uncle to come. Given the death of their parents, I forget the details, but anyway, their uncle is coming and he's gonna like pick them up, but now they're missing. That's the thing. That's the point. They're missing, and Cadfael is trying to find them. Like, you know, as usual, he kind of gets involved in this from kind of a sort of a sideways angle, you know, like he's sent from Shrewsbury Abbey to this other abbey because there's a brother there who has been who's been injured. Wow, God, it's only been a month, and you'd think I would remember what happened in this book. Oh my God. Anyway, so he goes to check on this guy, and then discovers that he actually knows something about the missing kids. They're not kids. The missing siblings, and it just kind of keeps going from there. Now, the Virgin in the Ice of the title is actually a nun who was traveling with them. And Cadfael discovers her body frozen in a creek. And of course that becomes another part of the mystery. Like, where's the boy? Where's the girl? He finds one and then not the other, and then that guy, and then he runs off, and then he has to find the, you know, keeps going, like keeps missing people and finding other people. And there's this monk who was traveling with them, they find out, and he seems to have this, you know, he doesn't remember what happened, but then when he starts to remember something, it seems like he might be guilty of something, almost a, you know, did he kill this? Is it a red herring? You know. So I, you know, enjoy trying to figure out like what had happened, but that's kind of, yeah, I mean, a lot of it was, I don't know, focused on the boy, who I think was about 13 or so. I don't know, but it was pretty good. Let's see how much we can get through before my camera battery dies. Babylon's Ashes by James S. A. Corey. Absolute legend, of course. Obviously, this is book 6 of The Expanse. I don't know that there's much to say about it at this point, just because I don't want to talk about the plot. It's book 6. And that matters in this case. I could tell you about The Virgin and the Ice as a book 6 because, you know, murder mysteries, self-contained. But Babylon's Ashes, not so much. I mean, this is a follow-up pretty quickly from Nemesis Games, where some pretty major things happened. And in this case, you know, we've got kind of a definitive, like, bad guy. Marco Inaros is out there, and he's causing problems. And he's really not doing too great a job of pulling together the whole belt into like a cohesive government, because it turns out that wrecking the shit out of Earth is a really bad idea when that's where all of the complex nutrients come from. So the belt is going to collapse in a few years if they don't do something about it like right away. But of course he doesn't really care, because that's not the kind of leader he is, because he sucks. So that's causing issues. And then, you know, the other people are kind of running on trying to find him, trying to figure out what he's going to do next. It's interesting. And it is also kind of the end of what the show adapts. There's some stuff in the last season of the show that kind of hints at some of the stuff of Laconia. But the intention, I don't think the intention was ever to actually continue and adapt the last 3 books, because there's a time jump of 30 years. So, like, I understand. But yeah, Babylon's Ashes is interesting as well, in that it has a bunch of perspectives scattered throughout, rather than having just like 4 or 5 constant perspectives. Like, the way the books go is each chapter is like, oh, this is a Holden chapter, and so you're following Holden. This is a Miller chapter. You know, this is an Avasarala chapter. In this book, you get some major characters who get a lot of chapters, and then you get other characters who have like 2 or 3. And even a few characters who only have 1 chapter. And it's an interesting choice that I don't necessarily loved for consistency, but I mean, I don't know, I'm just mentioning it. Okay, sorry, I'm kind of trying to speed. probably not a good idea, but I continued yet another series. And I read Network Effect by Martha Wells. So this is book 5, excuse me, of Murderbot. And the first one that's actually a full-length novel. And that really, like, improved my enjoyment. I've generally liked the series, but the fact that this is a longer book, there's more time to get to know the characters, there's more time for Murderbot to have, like, at least 5 mental breakdowns. It's great. I love it. And I had a really great time with it. And, you know, find myself actually sort of caring about some of the characters that aren't Murderbot. And I think it was a little bit hard to get into at the beginning. I was like, what the hell is going on? But once I kind of pieced that together, and then there's some kind of odd asides almost happening in the book, and eventually you do find out like why that's happening, and that's interesting. And I like really liked the, I don't know, the development the Murderbot is continuing to go through as a character, and its relationship with art, and kind of how that develops in the book, and perhaps will in the next book, which I'm hoping to read pretty soon. So that was great, yeah. And then I read a couple books from my 20 books list, because obviously September, end of the 3rd quarter, needed to get another 5 in, so I had to read 2 more to do that. And I chose Downbelow Station by C.J. Cherryh. It was okay. It won the Hugo, and I don't really know why, but it was okay. I've never read anything by her again. I mean, I've never read anything by her before. I probably will again, but how do I explain it? All right, my battery died. So I'm back a little bit later, and I was really rushing through everything, probably to the detriment. So let me actually very quickly, again, The Expanse is a sci-fi series, and it's set in the future, and it's one of my favorites. I really love it, and I'm rereading it. So that's why I read Babylon's Ashes. It's 9 books, and that's book 6, so I'm almost there. The only one I've never read before is book 9, so I'm really looking forward to getting to that right at the end of the year. You know, it's like a space opera. There's a lot of politics and war and spaceships, and it's just overall a really great time. The Murderbot Diaries is set in this sort of corporate hellscape future with a lot of like companies. It's like end late stage capitalism gone mad, and the main character is a sort of a cyborg who is or was a security unit tasked with being hired out to different like groups of humans, kind of by this insurance company, I think was the idea. Like they would pay insurance for a group of humans to go on to do whatever mission they wanted, and the humans would pay it, the insurance company, you know, so they'd have the insurance, and then they would also send security. But it's also a profoundly dehumanizing and horrible life that the sec units live. I mean, to the point where Murderbot does not consider itself human. I guess it isn't in a way, because like I said, it's a cyborg, and I don't think that it was ever like just human and then had bits added. I think it's just always been this way, but we don't really know that. And that's what I find interesting about Murderbot as a character, is that it is so much more human than it wants to admit to being, primarily in that it is like clearly traumatized by a lot of the experiences that it has had in the past and the way that it's been treated. But it's also really interesting just to continue reading the series and see how much the character has changed since the first novella. So yeah. Okay, so I think I've kind of covered some more stuff about those series. Now, Downbelow Station is also part of a series, but I don't think I'm gonna read it. I don't know. I picked this up just based on the title, like, and the author. Like 100% was like, first of all, I'd like to read a CJ Cherryh. Second of all, Downbelow Station makes me think of Babylon 5. That's it. That's the entire reason. Babylon 5, part of the station, the shitty part where all the homeless people end up, is called Downbelow. So anyway, in the book Downbelow Station, Downbelow is the name of the planet according to the beings that live there, because they don't have they're a little like less sophisticated terminology, I guess. They call their planet down below, and they call space up above, which, okay, got it. So it's the beginning of a 7-book series, and I'm still on the fence as to whether I want to continue it, because there are characters that I'm curious about, like what will happen to them in the future, but it might also be a series that doesn't continue to follow these people. I have no idea. So I'm gonna do a little more poking into that before I really decide if I want to continue it. But Downbelow Station itself, oh boy. So first of all, the first chapter is the most boring thing I've ever read in my life. Slight exaggeration, but it's just this backstory of how the world is set up. Like, oh, Earth made a space station, and then they made another one further out, and then there's this whole ring of space stations, and they ship stuff between them, but then they discovered these planets that it was actually possible to grow things on, and then there was a war, and it's like, okay, I don't care, ma'am. Like, dribble this in throughout the rest of the narrative, you know? Make me fight for it, make me dig for it. But no, she's got to be like, here's a whole fucking chapter about all of the setup. Now let's get to the story. And it's like, it's very boring. I don't like that just giant info dump. And I'm like, if the book is like this. But it was fine after the first chapter. There were like characters and events. Yeah, so basically there's these two factions. One is based on Earth and the other one is based in space, fighting over who gets to control the stations and the planets. And for some reason, we're sort of supposed to be on Earth's side. I guess not really. Like, I don't know. They both seem to suck a lot. And the book focuses on Pell and Pell Station. Pell is this planet, and Pell Station is a station in space by the planet. Got it, yeah, okay. And it's neutral, theoretically, but is basically just kind of having to try and survive while all of the stuff is going on around it. And a handful of characters who, like, live there. Yeah. So. Sorry, distracted. Yeah, and so it was an eventful book. And I was curious throughout the whole thing, you know, what's going to happen? Like, are these characters going to be okay? There were several characters that I quite liked, and I'd like to know what happens to them. But like I said, I don't know if the next book will tell me. And, like, it's a kind of a long, slowish book, and I don't know if I entirely love the world or anything. Like, I'm just not sure. So we'll see. And it's not, you know, I didn't think it was part of a series, so I didn't think I was potentially making a commitment. So I'm hesitant. All right, but let's talk about the final book, okay? The final book of September was The Emissary by Yoko Tawada. So this one is another weird book. I don't know how to talk about it, but so it's the future, and we're on Japan, and we're following this really old man whose great-grandson lives with him, and his great-grandson's like a little kid. He's like, I don't know, 7 or something, and he's looking after him. And for some reason in the future, old people live forever, and children are very delicate and kind of pathetic physically. And the nations of the world have all like cut themselves off from each other. Maybe. Yeah, or at least Japan certainly has. But they make It seemed like the other ones did too, probably, but they don't actually have any way of knowing because they don't talk to each other. And it's a weird book. Like, it was interesting to read, but ultimately, like, I don't know, I found it really unsatisfying because, like, it doesn't really have a plot. We just kind of see some stuff that the grandfather does, or great-grandfather does in his day. And then you get a bit at the end that's more from the perspective of the kid and what he's doing at school. And then there's a bit where the kid is a teenager. And finally, the title comes in because there's this group of people who want to reach out to the outside world and find out what's going on out there. And they want to send a kid as an ambassador, hence the title, The Ambassador. And they decide they want to send him. And, like, it's just an odd book. Like, I don't even... Because they don't even end up doing it necessarily, because the book ends. Like, it's all just over. And I don't know. Like, I don't even have anything to say about it. I thought it was, you know, a fine reading experience. It's very short, which is probably part of the problem, but, like, maybe I'm just missing something. And there's just, like, it just didn't really grab me. It didn't really work for me. I will say one thing about it, which wasn't really an issue for me. I just think it's an interesting thing. There were parts where he would talk about how, like, foreign words were being removed from the Japanese language and they were replacing them with stuff. But one of the things that they would kind of do almost would be to take Chinese words, well, I guess Chinese words don't count as foreign somehow, that sound the same and use those. I don't know, I feel like some of the language stuff must make more sense if you're reading the book in Japanese. You know, so there's probably, like, some of that is probably lost in translation. But yeah, I don't know. It was, like, it was well written. I just was like, what is the point? I guess for me, I prefer books to have plots and resolutions of some sort, or at least to make me feel something, which this didn't even really do. I was just like, okay, like, the whole time. So yeah, that was kind of a failure, but I didn't hate it. I was just kind of like, by the end. But overall, I think it was a successful month because, like, I continued some series, learned some cool facts about animals, and read a couple of books from my list. So, like, overall, it was a good time. Yeah. And I mean, of the group, I would say I had mostly wins, and some just kind of more baffling reads, but mostly wins. And hopefully the mostly wins continue into October. And I'm trying to read spooky books in October, and we'll see how many I actually read because, like, I just never read that many books per month. So if 2 of them are already not going to be spooky, you know, will we even be able to notice when I talk about them in a month that they were spooky? I don't know, but I'm working on it. So I will see you then, and I hope you also read some spooky books this October, or whatever you want. So see you later. Goodbye.